plastic police presence this time. We have a few open areas where they could come in, but they have been secured by the police really, really well. So they're making their noise, having their tantrum over there, and we've got this space. The police are holding the line really well. Should we start?
So they should be able to tell them.
I don't know if someone can maybe put a comment on to say if you can hear me well. We're using some new lapel mics, so if there's someone could at some point tell me if you can hear us, that would be great. Okay, so microphone on. One's just recording and one's live.
Oh, right, yeah. I can't see the
Hello, hello.
Should be white or red?
Video is now recording. We better start though. What's up? Hello? Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently witnessing the ultimate rebrand, a modern twist on the classic cross-dressing hobby that has now been packaged and sold as transvestism 2.0, better known as transgenderism. What began as men's fascination with women's underwear and clothes has slowly morphed into a quest for men to experience what they believe to be the female experience, shaped by distorted and pornographic views. To keep the bizarre transformation from creepy transvestism to stunning and brave transgender woman under wraps and prevent us from even questioning it, to stop us from questioning the fact that predatory men are now freely using women's and children's spaces, this fetish was given a spiritual makeover. Enter the catchy slogan, born in the wrong body. And just like any good marketing campaign, it has now been pushed onto our babies and youth for enormous profit. This is gender ideology, a dangerous ideology that obviously puts women and girls at risk. The Australian government is wholeheartedly embracing. Today we find ourselves at a critical crossroads for women's rights in Australia. Recently, a judge operating within the framework of gender ideology ruled that a man, Jason, who now identifies as a transgender woman, should be referred to as mystical in a court of law. Why? Because he obtained a piece of paper in Queensland stating that he is female. The Australian government has reduced our sex to nothing more than an idea in a man's head. But this isn't just a legal fiction. This decision has profound and dangerous implications for every single woman and girl in Australia. It suggests that a falsified legal document can now override the biological reality of sex. To those listening in as well, I ask, do you understand what this means for you, for your daughters, and for the future of female-only spaces and our fundamental human rights? Gender ideology has totally erased our right to freely assemble without the presence of men. This verdict is an absolute outrage. It sends a clear message that women and girls are no longer recognised as a distinct legal category in Australia. The concept of sex, according to this judge, is now something that can be changed, a notion that defies both science and common sense. Terms like cis and trans are not just being adopted as ridiculous social labels, they are being enforced as legal truths, effectively erasing the boundaries that protect women's rights. Our girls no longer have the right to tell strange men invading their spaces to get out. This is a travesty. It's a huge shame for Australia. Unbelievably, Amnesty International, an organisation once synonymous with human rights, is now defending the man who proudly boasts about accessing changing rooms where teenage girls and children are present. How did we reach the point where the safety of our daughters and the privacy of us as women and girls are secondary to men pretending to be women? I want to thank every single woman and man who are standing against this madness. It's your voices that make it that little bit easier for other people to speak out about this absolute assault on women and girls' safety and privacy. To the Australian government, please know we are in this fight for the long haul. We will not be silenced. We will continue to speak out until our sex-based rights and the realities are recognised once again in law, until law acknowledges the unchangeable truth that humans cannot change sex. And we will not stop until each and every woman and girl in this beautiful country have the right to female-only spaces free from the presence of men. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for being here. I just want to give a shout out to Michelle and the Women's Action Group in Melbourne who had their speaking event last week. Those brave women, about 20, 30 of them, stood in the face of danger with about 100 trans activists that just wanted to get to the women and harm them. Also, I want to give a shout out to, Emma and Turfs in the Tropics who are watching today. I want to talk about Shannon Fentiman. As a former Attorney General and Minister for Women, she has placed every single woman and child in Queensland in danger. She is responsible for removing all safeguarding barriers that women before us fought for and won. Just look around here. Women are not even allowed to speak without having the fear of violence hanging over our heads. Why are these people so afraid of us speaking? Nowhere in human rights does it give any other human the power to silence another. But here we are, other humans trying to stop us, women. We've got two XX chromosomes, adult human females, they're stopping us from speaking. We are told that a vagina does not make you a woman, but apparently lipstick, high heels and a handbag do. The definition of a civil war is a war between citizens of the same country. And just look at the behaviour of these men claiming to be women. Trans ideologues have declared a war on women. This is Australia's first civil war because we will not relinquish our rights. We will not betray the women who came before us and fought for the rights we had until men decided they were women. I still can't believe that we are expected to believe that a woman can have a penis, or that a man who castrates himself is exactly the same as those born with female chromosomes XX. Let's look at Tiggle versus Giggle. The verdict was the worst example of patriarchy in history. Men having a higher status in law as a woman than actual women who now have no status in law in Australia. Could it get any more disgusting than a man claiming he is an oppressed woman suing an actual woman for believing in biological reality? Why did the federal government leave the introduction of sex salvi to the states? We are not just Queenslanders living in Queensland, we are Australians living in Australia, and this issue affects every Australian. What we need is a plebiscite, and every single Australian woman and man needs to vote on this issue. The government does not have a social licence to do what they have done, and that is why no state consulted women about the loss of women's rights and children's safeguarding. In fact, Queensland's Shannon Fentiman said she did not need to consider women because women are not stakeholders. Imagine that, women not being consulted about the loss of women's rights. So what Shannon Fentiman did was hand over our rights over to men who claim they are women. Shannon Fentiman said in an interview in 2023, gender equality is inclusive. It's not one group advancing at the expense of another. Let's be inclusive and bring everyone with us. The most stupid sentence that ever left a politician's mouth. What Fentiman has done has let one group advance at the expense of another. Women are now having to self-exclude. Women are now losing in women's sports because men are allowed to compete in women's sports. These men are no different to drug cheats. Women no longer have any safe spaces because any man at any time has access to all of the spaces where women are vulnerable. And it isn't as if you can even ask a random man who has turned up in the women's public showers for a copy of his birth certificate, because that would be transphobic. So every single predatory man in Australia has been given the green light to enter into spaces he should not be allowed in, because all he has to say is, I identify as a woman. Do predatory men no longer exist in Australia in 2024? Only an idiot would claim that no man would claim he was a woman to gain access to women and children. Not only have men claimed womanhood, they even claim that they have picked up from where the suffragettes failed. They have renamed the suffragette flag the genderqueer flag. At our July event, Leah and I were abused for wearing suffragette scarves, and I will tell you why. The trans ideologues claim that the suffragettes were not trying to win the vote. As we know, they always rewrite history, so their version is that the suffragettes were trying to queer women because women apparently were so unhappy, and have been throughout history, because so many women themselves are men. This is so disgusting, the suffragettes must be rolling over in their graves. In case you weren't aware, the term suffragette was a slur made up by men in the early 20th centuries, but the suffragettes owned that name to take away men's power, just like we now own the term TERF. The trans ideologues claim that it stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Female, but TERF actually stands for Tired of Explaining Reality to Fuckwits. We will not back down from this issue. We will not walk away. We will not be silent. Every single one of us needs to demand that the federal government take on our concerns and have a plebiscite, so we all get a say on whether as a country we accept the erosion of women's rights, the erosion of women as a sex class, the erosion of women's and children's safeguarding. We will not hand the hard-fought-for gains to these men. Our gains be lost. That would be disrespecting those women that came before us and made a world a better place for women. As Leah said, we will not be silenced. Who's next? Who's next? Is everyone? Thank you. Ooh.
Okay, I've jumped in. Is that okay, me jumping in?
Yes, of course. I'll just... So click on property? Yes. Yeah.
My name's Gillian Spencer. I'm a psychiatrist who is... Thank you. 16 months ago, I was stood down from the Queensland Children's Hospital for standing up against gender interventions for children. I'm a mother of 3 kids, and I'm just going to start off by talking about my middle child. My son, I breastfed you until you were 2 in the hope that you would feel secure and valued. When you were 3, I remember that you would stop at the door of a dark room before going in, and you'd ask me if there were monsters in there. I reassured you that there were no monsters. I wanted you to be confident. I have not been an over-anxious mother. I have let you climb things and ride your bike around the suburb. I have wanted you to be adventurous. You are now 13, you are bigger than me, and you are everything I wanted you to be. You are secure, confident, and adventurous. So why are you and your friends letting a 13-year-old girl who is pretending to be a boy come into the boys' change rooms at school? Are you serious when you tell me that you can't say anything because you might get a detention? My son, if you don't resist, you know what is coming next. There'll be sanitary products in the boys' change room. Don't fix this by going to the teachers. The resistance doesn't need to be solemn or to go through formal channels. You boys just need to tell her that it's the boys' changing room. She can't come in. Occupy the space, block the door, throw a ball around in there. Let her know that you're not going to go along pretending with something so ridiculous. It doesn't matter if you get the detention. Take the detention. I don't want you to grow up to be a senior hospital executive who defends the transitioning of children in the gender clinic for the sake of his job or for his office window view of the river.
Shame.
I don't want you to grow up to be like the male child psychiatrists who have manoeuvred themselves into positions of leadership but remain silent when they see the gender clinic putting disturbed and traumatised children onto discredited treatments like puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. I don't want you to be like Justice Robert Bromwich, who has let down the girls and women of Australia with his gutless and pathetic judgment in the Tickle versus Giggle case. My son, I want you to resist, not just for you. I want you to resist for the sake of the girls so they don't have to have boys in their spaces. What has happened to teenage boys? Teenage boys, when I were at school, were a force to be reckoned with. They'd play basketball at lunchtime out on the basketball courts, and they would come into the classroom all red-faced and sweaty, and they would not care how they looked or how they smelled. They mainly cared about making each other happy and making each other laugh. They took up space and they spoke their mind. When I was at school, no teenage girl would dream of approaching a group of teenage boys. You never knew what they would say or do. They could burp on cue, and you did not want to find yourself blushing and giggling at one of their rude but very funny jokes. So why am I here at a women's rights rally raving on about teenage boys? Women, I think that given teenage boys have vacated the space, some of us are going to have to occupy their societal role. We need to start to enjoy a little rebellion. We need to put pressure on the system by not complying with expectations. We also need to care much less about being seen as nice, kind and caring. Strong and outspoken is now the goal. We need to congregate in groups and work together on cooperative projects that further our cause. We need to mainly care about impressing each other and making each other laugh. As the Olympic boxing has shown and the Giggle versus Tickle verdict, the situation has become desperate. The disrespect towards women has been breathtaking. And now they are also radically expanding the services that deliver discredited interventions, gender interventions to children to across Queensland.
Shame on the government.
I know there are professional women who are keeping quiet and playing a long game by trying to get into positions of power to resist this from the inside, and I respect that. But you better make sure that the long game isn't too long, because women and children's rights in Australia are currently in free fall. We need to constantly, relentlessly ridicule the manifestations of gender ideology. I want to acknowledge all the women on social media who are comment after comment, repost after repost, communicating to everyone that we are not believing in gender ideology and we're not going along with it. It's really important that we continue to set the tone in this way, but we need to do that in real life too. My suggestion is that women, wherever you go in your life, when you come across the manifestations of gender ideology, try not to shut yourself down. Try to be confident enough to resist a little. Like a teenage boy, sigh, groan. Oh, what? Is this a joke? Because we can't continue to keep quiet and we can't continue to put up with this bullshit.
Who's next? Oh, wait on. No, you come. Hey, you're next.
What do I do with that?
Just
Oh, sorry.
stick it on here.
Oh, can I put that on?
Yeah, it's
What was
okay.
that?
It'll still work. I'll get that later.
You want to put it on?
I've got the glass.
Oh. Someone else to do it?
It clips on, but
Here. Leah, can you get this on? Sue's eyes aren't working.
it lines up the... We don't have to have it. We
Sorry,
can
I don't know. Yep.
all good? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Just thank you so much for everyone for being here. Like, it's just phenomenal to get this support, and it's great. Before anything else, I just want to say that I stand with Sal Grover. And quite frankly, I'm sick of being told that women need to be kind. I'm sick of people telling me be kind, be tolerant, be compassionate, that a man wanting to be a woman doesn't even affect me. But the issue is not about how a few people choose to see themselves. The issue is compelling the rest of society to also see them as that, i.e. the opposite sex, when we know for a fact sex is immutable and binary. Oh, and the stealing of our words. This is destroying all women's boundaries and forcing us to accommodate men in female-only spaces, such as rape shelters, DV shelters, female change rooms, female prisons. Women are already vulnerable in these spaces, but they do at least offer some refuge as they were formerly single-sex. Many women are traumatised by sexual violence at the hands of men. Men perpetrate 97% of sexual assaults and women make up over 90% of the victims. So why don't the needs and the feelings of these already traumatised women get any consideration? Where's the compassion? It's not kind to force traumatised women and girls to pretend that men are women. It's not kind to force teenage girls to change in front of adult men pretending to be them. It's not kind to compel survivors of male violence, sexual assault and rape to call a male attacker she or her. It's not kind to allow men to punch women in the face and give them a gold medal for it. It's not kind to lock women behind bars with violent rapists. It's not kind to tell young lesbians they must accept dicks in their dating pool and being same-sex attracted is transphobic. It's not kind to force traumatised rape victims to sleep in dorms with men. It's not kind for a man to take a woman to court for refusing to let him on a female-only social networking app and trying to get the same woman to pay for his electrolysis and having his penis removed. It's not kind to gaslight women and girls to ignore our basic instincts when we're in spaces with males, or that these instincts are transphobic or indeed criminal. It's not kind to make government employees use preferred pronouns and deny their own reality in order to make delusional men feel comfortable. It's not kind to lie to children about reality. Tell them their bodies are wrong and require experimental drugs and mutilation to fix. It's not kind to create a worldwide shortage of estrogen due to males with synthetic sex identities so that menopausal women can't access this for their actual hormone replacement therapy. It's not kind to scream obscenities and much worse at grandmothers and mothers concerned about their rights being stolen and the vile medical abuses occurring against vulnerable young people. And I note that the current Greens candidate for Lytton, Jade Whitler, was among these kinds, screaming obscenities at women right here, trying to speak about the loss of our rights at the International Women's Day rally last year, as well as at the Brisbane Let Women Speak event. And it's not kind to demand that women accept their own demotion and dehumanisation. I'd like to finish with the words of a former high school teacher in Canada with a heartbreaking story of what is happening to vulnerable kids caught up in this ideology. Griffin Severett just wanted love, acceptance and a community to belong to. Just like any other 13-year-old, the age at which she first socially transitioned, she wanted to fit in and feel like she was loved and respected by her peers. Had she grown up a decade sooner, she might have dressed emo for a while, dyeing her hair black and experimenting with bold makeup as a way to explore her identity and give her an edge. Perhaps she would have taken to sometimes smoking or drinking behind her parents' back, or maybe she would have simply joined the school art club where she could find friends and that would have been enough. Instead, she grew up in a culture that is deeply sick, a culture that leads vulnerable children to believe that permanently destroying their bodies with drugs and surgeries is the only path to true happiness, while medical institutions readily provide this so-called care. Griffin got on the path of bodily modification and never got off it. She was perpetually chasing an imaginary endpoint at which the cosmetic interventions would make her feel worthy. The testosterone wasn't enough, the double mastectomy wasn't enough, and neither was the hysterectomy. Then the phalloplasty brought years of excruciating pain and severe health complications, ultimately leading to her death at only 24. I urge trans activists / allies to reflect on what has happened here. Please consider the possibility that encouraging others to accept their bodies as they are, rather than encouraging them to undergo dangerous medical interventions, is very far from hateful. In fact, it is the only truly compassionate approach.
This lady over here wants to speak. Yeah, Jan King. Do you want to click this on? Oh, you don't want this? It's a microphone.
This is just a paraphrase of something a feminist wrote on Twitter a few years ago. We're not debating whether you exist when we deny your fantasy self-image is real. If we tell a cult member that they're believing lies and a dangerous liar, we don't deny that the cult member exists. If we tell an anorexic girl she's not overweight, we don't deny her existence. We're trying to save her. But we are debating whether your fantasy self-image, your metaphysical beliefs about gender, should become the basis of law and public policy, erase the political recognition of sex and sex differences, and erase children's rights to safety. That's what we're debating.
Anna, do you want to go?
Just click this on.
So do I still have to hold that?
Yeah.
My name's Anna. I want to acknowledge that we meet on Aboriginal land, and I want to pay my respects to the elders past, present and to come. I also want to express my solidarity with our warrior, Sal Grover. We want our stuff back. Not only our single-sex sports, lesbian dating sites, women's change rooms, public toilets, women's prisons. We also want freedom of opinion and expression. We want women's right to assembly and association. We want our right to speak and to organise. We don't want women being so afraid of violence and job loss that they can't dissent, that they feel they can't even meet with other women. We want the police to uphold the Peaceful Assembly Act 1992 every time. Not once, not twice, every time. There's a hint in the name of that act, Peaceful Assembly. We've been denied this right for most of the past 6 years in Brisbane, specifically in relation to speaking of the harms of gender ideology to women and children. This is not new. These speaking events did not begin in the last year. They've been happening, and the violence and threatened violence have been happening for 6 years. Not every time, but it began in 2018. Mark Ryan, MP, is the Minister for Police and Community Safety. Yet he has allowed the mob, some of whom are Labor Party members, to smash women's right to speak in the Brisbane CBD. Do better, Mark. Women have human rights and we're coming for them. In September 1977, 2 months before the birth of the current Queensland Premier Stephen Miles, the then Queensland Premier Joe Bjelke-Petersen from the National Party outlawed the political street march and assembly. Joe said, and I quote, "The day of the political street march is over. Don't bother applying for a permit, you won't get one." End of quote. They were the days of police permits. The police could say yay or nay to a planned assembly. No reason was needed. We had blatant politicisation of the Queensland Police. While Stephen Miles was a tiny baby, a political movement sprang up intent on winning the right to peaceful assembly. And I think there are 1 or 2 other people apart from myself who were involved. I was 25 and I was a part of that movement. Before Stephen Miles was a month old, we'd held our first illegal street march with 400 arrests. I had 9 arrests in the ensuing years. Others had more. Many people left Queensland because they couldn't get jobs in the public service since they were known protesters. Similar things are happening now in Queensland state government departments. Hundreds of police on overtime were used to make more hundreds of arrests over several years as the campaign of civil disobedience advocated for the right of citizens to assemble peacefully with others in a public place. The permit system enabled either the police or the politicians to decide whether citizens could peacefully assemble. Today, people on our own side in this fight against genderism still seem to not understand we don't have a permit system in Queensland. In a staggering display of both ageism and classism, 2 New South Wales lawyers from our own side recently said to me, the Queensland Police have a right to veto assemblies. They do not. The 92 Peaceful Assembly Act, passed by Labor Premier Wayne Goss after a long civil disobedience campaign, got rid of permits. Yet when I say this in women's meetings, the implied message I receive is, what would an old pensioner woman know when we, the younger professionals, haven't heard of this? Well, the old pensioner woman does know because she was there. Please Police no longer have the power to refuse the community group's notice of intention to assemble. They haven't had that power since 1992, though they sometimes suggest they do. The NOI is just a written form advising the police that the community group intends to assemble. That's all it is. There's nothing complicated about it. What the police can do, and this is a good thing, is impose conditions pertaining to public safety, public order, the rights and freedoms of other people. If there's an NOI from a hostile group for an assembly at the same time, at the same venue, the police can also make application to the Magistrates Court to seek an order for that second application to not be given, or for the second application to be held at a different time or a different venue. When the Queensland Police have refused to provide us with protection to ensure we can exercise our basic democratic rights, they're simply not doing their job. They should have gone to the Mags Court at some stage in the last 6 years. It doesn't matter whether it's Joe Peterson from the National Party telling citizens the day of the political street march is over, or whether it's Stephen Miles and Mark Ryan from the Labor Party enabling their thugs to close down women who oppose the Queensland State Government's laws. The outcome is the same: suppression of dissent from the state by the community. The Labor Party is as interested in crushing dissent from the state as was the National Party. They just do it differently. Last month, 21 July, saw the worst display by the male supremacists, but it wasn't the first. In 2018, our IWD march was taken over by the male supremacists. Their loud male voices replaced our slogans about lesbian rights and stopping domestic violence with slogans promoting genderism and the prostitution industry. But at least in 2018, the police attended our rally in adequate numbers, and every time we were jostled and pushed by the trans, the police stepped in. And today, it's fabulous to see them again, finally doing their job. We all know the story of the 6-year-old Afro-American girl Ruby Bridges, who in 1960 was accompanied by police to a recently desegregated public school to ensure the racists could not deny her democratic right to an education. Racism and misogyny so frequently go together. Many of us saw the video footage from the Melbourne Women's Rights Rally just last week, when more than 80 police were sent to establish a safe buffer between the violent male supremacists and the women who spoke. The Victorian police, like the Queensland police, haven't always accepted their responsibility to ensure women can speak safely and peacefully, but they are now. Minister for Police Mark Ryan has the same legal responsibility, and he needs to step up every time. Thank you.
Kathy. We need...
Oh, the thing. Where is it?
Thanks, Anna.
I just put this on you.
Oh, that's good.
Do I have to hold it up or put it in there? Is that okay?
As you've all heard, the decision of the federal court on Friday in the case of Tickle versus Giggle against CEO Sal Grover in favour of Roxanne Tickle's gender identity is a blow for women's rights to safety, dignity, privacy, and these are our rights enjoyed because they were struggled for. They were never just given to us. They were struggled for by our mothers, our grandmothers, and all the women who came before them. More than that, it's an assault on the primal sex recognition capacity of all humans. The reason Tickle was removed from the app was that he was accurately, visually identified as a man. The law is telling us, all of us, that we are no longer allowed to trust the authority of our own body signals when it comes to sex recognition. This is a massive assault on our primal safeguarding instincts. We need to be able to trust these instincts to keep us safe from danger. The infiltration of gender ideology into our laws in the guise of progressive kindness, inclusion, and human rights to accord the status of truth in law to the baseless claim that sex is changeable has been meant to disrupt all we know about the biology of human life. It is the knowledge of this biology which all of us rely on when our bodies are sick, injured, pregnant, sterilised, feeling pain, or numb to it. It is the sexed body that is treated, male or female, whether secondary sex characteristics have been replaced with experimental synthetic parts or remain natural. The sexed body, not the mystical, fluid, physically dissociated, impossible to define gender identity. Now, laws such as the Sex Discrimination Act are not grounded in the reality of our sexed bodies, where previously these were enacted to protect us as a sex class of women on the basis of discrimination we experienced precisely because of the implications of our reproductive capacity and physical difference from male bodies. In this way, the law is now gaslighting and grooming us on a massive scale around the world. Male opportunists have had the doors opened to them to legally access our spaces just by saying the magic words, "I feel like a woman." But we must stay grounded in our natural, adaptive, evolutionary safeguarding instincts. We are the only animals ignoring the reality of our senses. We are being indoctrinated with claims that men are women because they claim womanhood, whether to gain entry to women's prisons when convicted of sexual crimes, or to women's refuges and rape crisis centres and legal services to access vulnerable women, or to women's sport to beat them, claim their spaces, claim their awards because of sheer misogyny and their sexual fetishes. We are expected to be blind to their male-bodied power. The law that insists that men can be women and lesbians is an outcome of the goals of a global multi-trillion-dollar industry, what Jennifer Billick and other researchers call the synthetic sex industry. This is now focused on our children and adolescents. It has required the influence of billionaires invested in medical technology, pharmaceuticals, on academic boards, multinational legal companies to bring this about. And that is the story of free advice and money to the TQ plus lobby, to those groups by the international law firm Dentons, backed by one of the biggest charitable foundations, Thomson Reuters. There is a Dentons playbook. It advises TQ plus organisations that to remove barriers to transing children, barriers like concerned parents, make sure you get ahead of governments and present them with progressive legal proposals before they can do it themselves. Hide your plans behind a veil and ensure neither the media nor the general public knows much about the wider changes you're trying to bring about. The public may well object if they know. James Kirkup in The Spectator suggests that no policy made in the shadows can survive the sunlight. We are here to ensure that while mainstream media keeps the changes in the shadows, we will shine a light on them because we care about all children, adolescents and families and women who are raised in law and life. A quote from George Orwell's 1984 reminds us how this authoritarian process has been working on our instincts to dull them, and our language and our sense of reality to cancel and upend them. This is the quote. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was the final and most essential command. Do not reject reality. Do not give up on your humanity and your human instincts.
I just put this on.
I'll take it out. Thanks very much, everybody. I stand with Sal Grover too. I stand with Gillian Spencer. So brave. Not doing what she's trained to do because of all of this rubbish. I stand with Anna. I just love this woman. So thank you so much, Anna. You're a champion and we all honour you. When I saw the video of your last thing in the park, I was absolutely shocked, and I shouldn't have been, I guess. I should have been more involved, but I was really shocked. It is male violence against women. That's what happened over there, and that's what's happening here as well. We make no bones about it. This is what is happening beyond a police barricade. We have a police barricade to actually protect us here in Brisbane's King George Square. It's shocking. And I'm just hoping that the people walking past and hearing them and seeing us, I think that that's probably more powerful for our cause than me speaking, whatever I can say. I actually think that's absolutely disgusting, and I think people walking past and seeing that are getting a very powerful lesson of what's in store. Because as has already been said, women can now not go to DV shelters and expect there not to be someone there with a penis. They can't go to a DV shelter when they're actually seeking help. Tickle versus giggle, it sounds like a joke. And people who don't know about tickle versus giggle, when I say it, they think it is. They think I'm starting a joke. But it's not funny. There's nothing funny about it. It's no laughing matter. And the judgment of that Australian judge this week has actually removed the meaning of the word woman. He has actually taken the word woman, and in legal terms, he has actually removed the meaning of it. No longer can we trust a birth certificate. Birth certificates are being forged, and we cannot trust this legal document any longer. They can be forged with government impunity. Girls are staying home from school when they have their periods because they don't want to have to share a cubicle beside a boy at school. So girls no longer have the freedom to be educated in the same way. We're going way back to the dark ages, long before retired people like Anna and myself stepped up. Long before. We're going right back there, and it's just not going to happen on our watch. Girls' sports. I mean, honestly, the Olympics, two of the strikers who won goals against the Matildas were guys. And yet we all expected to just nod and wave and say this is all fine. There were no women in the men's teams. There were no women stepping up to play in the men's sports. We just saw men infiltrating women's sports. Chloe Cole was out recently. What an incredible, sad story. Many of you will have seen things on the YouTube from Chloe. After she came, there has been a number of people come out and say, I'm the same as Chloe. I want to detransition. Help me do it. And I tell you what, it's not an easy journey, and it's never going to be okay for them, totally okay. But we need to believe that there is redemption even for people who have gone to that really dark place, because they're coming out feeling as if they have actually been robbed of their childhood. They have been lied to, and they've been lied to not only by people who are close to them, but they've been lied to by our medical profession, and they've been lied to by our legal profession, and they've been lied to by our government. And there will come a day of reckoning. I'm 100% sure of that. So for every Australian who cares about the truth, and some of your T-shirts are pretty funny because I just love reading, I'm not a vet, but I know what a dog is. I just think that's pretty funny. But, you know, for those of us here who know what the truth is, the science, the purple one there about the science, that's why we're here today, for every Australian. And for one of those people over there, there's probably 100,000, if not more, people who know the truth. That's why we're standing here today. So thanks for letting me speak.
I'll just put this here because I don't know if I've got anywhere. Wait on, can you hold that? I'll click on. Use the microphone for the live feed. Got that in there?
Yeah, man. I'm Gomeroi warrior woman, and I'd like to give you all a blessing. Yama wearin wearinga, yama wearin, yama wearinga, yama wearin. Ibandu wandu, ibandu wandu, ibandu wandu, ibandu wandu. Yama wearinga, yama wearin, yama wearinga, yama wearing. Everyone, please stamp your left foot and put your hands like a rainbow from left to right. Okay? Yama, hello, wearinga, good spirit. Ibandu, go away. Wandu, bad spirit. When you stop, the left-hand side of your body is the feminine, and that's the energy coming into your body. So when you stamp your left foot, you're calling on Bayama, rainbow serpent, our creator. And when you put your hands from left to right, you're helping shed a different light on the subject. So it's a lesson to teach you how to respond instead of react. So, you know, when you're being challenged, remember this moment, stamp your left foot and put your hands like that, okay? And then you're not going to give those people the reaction that they're driving for, okay? So first and foremost, I'm one of Australia's first drag kings, and I don't understand, you know, a lot of you are probably heterosexual, but I don't understand, with lesbian, gay, bisexual, it's about intimacy, whereas the other part of the alphabet soup, TID, that's about identification. So I don't even understand why we're under the same umbrella. So, yeah, lesbian rights need to be stood up for, and we've always been the anomaly, you know, in the community. Like I was a photojournalist for the Queer Press for 12 years, and back in the late 90s, a consensus happened when they changed the Centrelink forms. And because I was staff, I found out the stats that 1 in 12 Australians identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex, and the ratio of puffs to dykes was 11 to 1. It's always been a male-dominated industry, and that's why I became one of the first drag kings, because there was no females represented within the queer community from an entertainment perspective. So then I had an incorporated organisation, and I trained up over 1,000 people and put them on stage. I am a famous drag king, and I'm dressed like this today to keep myself safe from that, okay? And yes, I'm so glad, because I was a model when I was 4, and a David Jones model, and I got lots of photos of me. And then I was molested by a man when I was 4 to 4.5. And then I became a model when I was younger. And then I got raped when I was 14 and 17. And I actually became a lesbian because I was afraid of male spaces. And I thank God, because I refused to wear dresses and stuff when I was a child, because I didn't want to be considered attractive. I thank God that I wasn't born in a contemporary society, because then I would have been filled with all these hormones and bullshit that's going on now. You know what I mean? And it's like, we don't hear very much at all from the female to male transgenders. We hear everything from the male to female. And it's male privilege from a whole different level. We've actually reverted the International Women's Day movement, where a bunch of strong women had the courage to stand up and fight the patriarchy, and now that male privilege still exists, but now it's under a different guise. And it's beautiful to see some strong men here who can open their minds and stuff to support human rights. And that was the thing. I saw that video that was at the last rally. That's why I'm here today. And I cannot believe the way that they were speaking. But those ones that were attacking you, they identify as females. So why are they yelling out trans rights or human rights? They should actually be saying women's rights. Yeah? But what I'd like to suggest to everyone is that we actually stop using the word woman. We are females. We are females. If they're going to take our woman identity as their own, let's start using a different terminology so we can separate ourselves from that new movement. Okay? Now this represents a thing. It says LIP. So we spend all our lives waiting to die, and then people stand up and say, oh, poor fella, blah, 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 blah. Let's turn life around. Let's love life and live in peace together. And hopefully you mob and that mob can sit down and have a yarn together and come up with some sort of cognitive process that is respectful on both sides of the fence. Yeah? Because, they've got their own issues, but it's become political now, whereas once upon a time it was private. So it doesn't need to be, that private business doesn't need to be in the news as it is now. It's private business. Do you know what I'm saying? So yes, as I said, I've been a very proactive member of the queer community for a very long time, and I am deeply disturbed about what's happening not only for the females of Australia, but the lesbians of Australia. We all need to join together and stand strong and encourage our children. Yeah, and that was another thing. Like, I'm old, and the first sex talk that we had was when we were in grade 5, when we were prepubescent. Why are we talking about children's genitals and their sexuality when they're this big? Stop. Let children be children. And then when we're starting to be prepubescent, that should be the only time that we should be talking to kids about anything related to their sex, gender, what's going to happen with them when they're growing up and all of that sort of stuff. So, please repeat after me. Gaba. I can't hear you. We've got to be louder than them. Gaba. Ba. Yana. Yeah. Gaba ba yana yeah, which means good life journey to you all. Thank you.
We've only got a few more minutes left. Is there anyone that wants to quickly say something? Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I will be very quick because there are so many intelligent and wonderful people here who said everything that I had in my 5-page speech. So 5-page speech is gone. But what I do want to say, what I wanted to focus on is how the trans rights activists or the trans lobby is winning at the moment. Everything from LGBT rights, forcing lesbians to accept them in the dating pool, schools forcing them to accept 100 genders, to people being too afraid to speak out at work, people actually being hate crimed because we have new hate crime legislation. So I wanted to focus on all the things that they're winning, but there are things that no matter what happens in Queensland, self-ID, whatever, anti-conversion therapy legislation, no matter what happens in Queensland, no matter what happens in Australia, and even no matter what happens in the world, there are things they cannot force us to do. Number one, they cannot force us to recognize them as the sex they are not. We have brains. Our brains correctly sex people. So no matter how they say they are stealth, we always know. The reason that we don't tell them is often that they respond violently to being told they're not stealth, or women are brought up to be very empathetic. So we'd say, oh no, you look great, Queen. No, you're not a queen, you don't look great. You cannot force us to disregard the evidence of our eyes and ears. Another thing you cannot force us to do is to validate you. Now, if you want to validate yourself as what you want to be, that is your own job. Women are not emotional support dogs. We do not need to validate you. And I guess the last thing is we cannot like or love you. You do not like or love yourselves. I've been reading some of the trans Reddit threads. There's war between trans-identified women and trans-identified men, where the trans-identified men are calling the trans-identified women misogynist for not wanting to have sex with the trans-identified men. Keep up? Yeah, I can't. Anyway, so you don't accept yourselves. You know. Yeah, out there, you know. I hope you can hear me. You know that you will never be a woman or a man or whatever you think you are. So thank you so much. I stand with Sal Grover. I stand, oh, she's gone. I stand with Juliet. But thank you so much.
Okay, we're just going to have one more speaker, Andrew.
You want this? It's for the microphone. There you go.
I haven't rehearsed anything, but last month I witnessed what those circus people did to the women trying to speak last week, and I reflected on the state of Queensland democracy and free speech. And it was a pretty sad sight, watching women who'd booked a space to speak politely, to speak quietly about their rights, getting trampled by these crazy, hair-dyed, insane people. We used to have asylums for this. I don't know what's happened, but something has definitely gone wrong. Watching the police today is great, though I feel a little bit kettled. It's unfortunate free speech isn't as free as it should be in Queensland. This time last month when I was watching that, at the exact same time, I was in the middle of a diversity seminar, being lectured about what it means to understand power, privilege and diversity. And I get the good intentions behind it, but I patiently listened on that Sunday through a module about sexism and the difference that navigating the world is for a woman. We had a module about consent, rape culture, and male violence. And then in the next breath, we were lectured about cisgender privilege. I had to speak up, and I encourage everybody else confronted with this sort of stuff to speak up as well. I encourage, if you're wondering how does someone push back against this, delete the pronouns in your bio. They're ridiculous, you don't need them. Do not bend the knee to this gender stuff. Like, playing along is how this all went downhill. Words matter. This is a war being fought in language. The word woman isn't up for debate, isn't to be co-opted. It means adult human female. We don't need a new dictionary. The old one works fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're just going to have one quick last one. I mean, here you go. we can't say no to this man.
So this is a parody of Gotcha. You may or may not know the song. Sorry. See, I can follow female autonomous direction. Look at me go. Now and then I think of when sex was gender and how being gay meant you only did guys. Now it's nonsense like non-binary and we're getting all comfy. But you're all fools. I'm glad we're over. But you didn't have to cut kids up. Make out like tomboys weren't really a thing. I don't even think you know, but you're cutting up kids and that's really rough. Thank you. It was longer, but you know.
Thank you, everybody who came. I don't think I need to add much more apart from I appreciate every single one of you who turned up, and we will not quit. We will not back down. Just so everyone knows, we've been circled by these men the whole time we've been here. They've been trying to get in through the space at the back of us. Thank you for the police for keeping us safe. Thank you. But most of all, thank you to everybody who's come out to speak. The people that are risking their jobs and their safety to come out and say things like, men are not women. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Ish, these two exits, not that way, obviously.